Take this question, 4 plus 3 times 5. Now realistically there are two ways in which we could approach this question, and the first way would be to do it in the order that it's written. Do the 4 plus the 3 and then times that by 5. So we could come along and we could say, well, 4 plus 3 is 7, and then we're going to times that by 5, and that's going to give us an answer of 35. However, somebody else might come along and say, well, no, I don't want to do the things in that order. I want to do it in a different order. Because it's maths, it's never that simple. So maybe we have to do it times first. Maybe that seems odd when we read from left to right, but actually there are lots of countries in the world that read from right to left. And if you're reading it right to left, you'd hit the times first. So maybe we have to do that first. In which case, 3 times 5 is 15. And then 4 plus that 15 gives us 19. So actually, if you were sitting there before we came to these answers thinking it doesn't really matter surely, well yes it clearly does, because we've taken one question, done it in 2 different ways and got 2 different answers, and that is a big problem. We are perfectly entitled to use different methods to do certain questions. But that's all based on the fact that the different methods will give us the same answer overall. And here we've got 2 different methods with 2 different answers, and this then is a problem. So which one is the correct answer and which one is the correct method? Well, it turns out that this is a problem that's very, very old. Whenever we have a question that's got multiple different things going on, like in that one we've just seen, the adding and the timesing, for example, there's always going to have been this problem of which one do we do first. So when maths was first being invented, people came across this problem and said, well, why don't we just set out a list, set out an order for which we do stuff. And say, well, first we'll do any of these, and second we'll do any of these, and third we'll do any of these, and so on. And if everybody sticks to that same order, then everybody will at least be doing the consistent thing. And so this list, this order, was set down. Now there is no understanding with this order really, other than it's this order because people decided that it was going to be. And the first thing we do is we look at the question and ask, are there any brackets? And if there's any information in brackets, then we do that bit first, whatever the sum happens to be in the brackets. But brackets are used to show that we do that bit first. After that, we have a look through the question and we see if there are any powers. I will explain shortly why I've written it in that way. It will all become obvious, don't worry. But we look through for any powers, so that's squareds, cubed, power 4, power 5 and so on, or any square roots in there. They come under this idea of powers as well. So brackets first, then powers, where O stands for powers. Then we look through. And from what we're left with, we see if there are any divides. And then we look through from what we're left with, and we see if there's any multiply, any times, and we do that. And by the time we've done that, we should just be left with add and subtract at the end. And once we're left with add and subtract, because adding and subtracting is just moving up and down a number line, we just do those in the order that they are written. Any adds and subtracts in the order that they're written. Now this order, you might recognise from the green letters, this order is called BODMAS. Brackets first, powers next, divides, multiplies, and then add and subtract at the end. It is possible that you might have heard this before, but you might have known it as BIDMAS. For the simple reason that O standing for powers is a little bit of a cheat. Properly, BODMAS and the O of BODMAS stands for order. Alternatively, I in BIDMAS stands for indices, where order and indices are both different names for powers. Order, indices and powers all mean the same thing. It's just that the exam will never refer to them as anything other than powers, and so neither will I. So we're using the O for powers as a little bit of a cheat because we're only ever going to call them powers. There's no point introducing another name for them here that we will never use anywhere else. So brackets first, then powers, divides, multiplies, and then adds and subtracts at the end. And this is the order that we stick to for any question that's got this mix of stuff going on. purely because this is the order that was decided on many, many years ago. This is much easier seen and explained in context with some questions, so we'll have a look back at that question we started with and see which of the two answers we obtained was the correct one by using the correct order for the operations. So now we've got our order, we'll have a look at this question again. 4 plus 3 times 5. So first thing we check for, are there any brackets? Well, no there aren't, so that's okay. We can skip to the next one. O for powers. There aren't any powers in here or any roots, so we can skip to the next one. There aren't any divides either. But there is a multiply. Multiply is the first thing on this list that we've actually got in our question, so that's the one we're going to do first. Now what we're going to do with these questions is we're going to be very careful and very systematic, and we're only going to do one thing at a time. We're not going to do too much. If we try and do too much, we get things mixed up and things start to go awry. Now what we're going to do with these questions is we're going to be very systematic. We're going to do things very carefully. We're going to make changes one line at a time, and we're only going to do one step at a time. If we try and do too much at once, things will go wrong. Multiply. So what it is it's the symbol and the numbers either side. So it is the 3 times the 5. The symbol and the numbers either side. 3 times 5 is 15. That's the change that we have made. The rest of the question then carries down. And the 4 plus we've not used yet, but that carries down onto the next line. We are now at the point where we've only got adds and subtracts. In fact, we've only got adds in this case. We've only got adds and subtracts. We're just going to do those in the order that they are written. And 4 plus 15 is 19. And the 19 is the correct answer here. 8 divided by 4 plus 2 times 3. So we're going to check through our order again, our brackets first. There are no brackets in this question, so that's okay. Powers, right, there aren't any powers either, so that's fine, we can skip to the next one. Divides, there is a divide. So here is the divide sign, and we are looking at the number in front and the number immediately afterwards. So this is the divide that we need to do. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we're going to write down the 2. Then the rest of the question we're going to carry down from the previous line. So the plus 2 and the times 3 we haven't used yet. We're going to carry those down. One change per line. Let's not try and do too much at once. The next one on our list is multiply. Well, we have a multiply in here, and the multiply that we have is 2 times 3. It's the number in front and the number immediately after of that symbol. So we're going to do the 2 times 3, which is 6. And the 2 plus from the previous line is going to carry down, because we haven't used that yet. We're now at the point where we've just got adds and subtracts again. We've just got an add. We're just on the adds and subtracts at the end, and we're going to do those in the order that they are written. And we are left simply with 2 plus 6, which is 8. And that is our final answer overall. Now, because these questions are just about following a strict order of steps, it is easy to have actually quite complicated looking questions. If we're systematic with them and we're careful and we follow the instructions one step at a time, one change per line, we can tackle quite complicated looking questions and break them down into separate stages. We're always going to stick with this same order. We have to follow things in this order. So first thing we check for, are there any brackets? And once again, there are no brackets, so that's okay. We come to the next thing on our list, O for powers. There is a power. There is a squared power here. So what we do is we do that power in 3 squared. 3 times 3 is 9. And the rest of that question then carries down because we haven't used it yet. So the times 15, the divided by 5, and the minus 2 are all still there from the previous line. Next thing on our list is divide. There is a divide in our question, and the divide that is here is the symbol, the 15 in front and the 5 afterwards. So we're going to do 15 divided by 5. It's the number in front and the number afterwards that we are going to do as the divide. 15 divided by 5 is 3. The 9 times that's in front and the minus 2 that's afterwards carry down onto the next line. One change per line, remember. Next in our list, multiply. There is a multiply in here. Here is the symbol. It's the 9 and the 3 either side. So we're going to do 9 times 3 is 27. And the minus 2 is still there. We're now at the point where we've just got adds and takes. At the end, we're going to do these in the order that they are written. 27 minus the 2, giving us a final answer then of 25. Now again, we can get increasingly complex questions here, but because we're just doing things in a very systematic order, the same order every time, one step at a time, we can deal with these questions nice and easily by breaking them down into much smaller things. So 50 plus 2 times, and then 6 times 3 plus 7 in brackets, divided by 5 squared, and then minus 10. We have to stick with this BODM and then AS order. So we're looking for brackets first. There are brackets this time, and in the brackets we've got 6 times 3 plus 7. So we're going to have to deal with the 6 times 3 plus 7 first, but within that we've got certain things that we have to do in a certain order. Is the times going to come first, or is the add? Well, according to this list, the times here is going to come first. So we are dealing with the bracket, but really we're dealing with this part of the bracket first. So 6 times 3 is 18. The plus 7 inside the bracket is still there. And that bracket overall is still there because we haven't finished dealing with it. The divide by 5 squared and the minus 10 afterwards are still there. Same with all this stuff in front. The 50 plus 2 and the times are all still there. We can now deal with the whole bracket, or what's left of the bracket. We've done the 6 times 3 within the bracket. We've got 18. We can now deal with the rest of the bracket. And in that bracket, 18 plus 7 is 25. The stuff in front of the bracket and the stuff after the bracket will then carry down onto this next line. So the 50, the plus, the 2 and the times in front, and then the divide, the 5 squared, the minus and the 10 afterwards. So that's brackets dealt with. Powers are next. There are some powers in here, and the powers are this 5 squared here. So 5 squared gives us 5 times 5 is 25. The minus 10 afterwards, and all that stuff in front, the 50 plus the 2 times the 25 divided beforehand, all carry down onto this next line. Granted, this is starting to look quite complicated, but because we're following the order of stuff, we just are checking for symbols. So we've done brackets, we've done powers. Divides next then. There is a divide in here. It's the 25 divided by the 25. The number in front and the number after. And 25 divided by 25, any number divided by itself, will simply give us 1. So the stuff in front carries down. That's the 50 plus the 2 and the times. The times is still there. And then the minus 10 afterwards. Divides are done. Multiplies next. Well, there is a multiply here in this question. It is this, 2 times 1. The 2 in front and the 1 afterwards. And 2 times 1 is simply 2. The 50 plus in front is still there. And the minus 10 is still there afterwards. We are now at the point where we have just got adds and subtracts in the order that they are written. So we're just going to do the adds and subtracts as they're written left to right, because it's just moving up and down a number line. So we're starting at 50, we're adding on 2, that takes us to 52. We're then going to go down the number line 10, because we're taking off the 10, giving us a final answer of 42.